for people who were not able to come today. Okay, so she has today's agenda.
Okay, so did you want me to jump in there, Beth?
Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So, so with the idea in mind that the stage 3 is due February 15th, we typically the month prior kind of just review the components of each stage as you're working on your e-portfolio. I can tell you that the meat or bulk of your e-portfolio is pulled into stage 3 and 4. So really 1 and 2 has been pretty should have been pretty easy. It looks like, I mean, everyone's on track and has done well so far. So so I wanted to cover that. And then in addition, there's a mid-year report evaluation component, talk 2 seconds about May presentations, and then today's speakers. So that's kind of where we're going. I shouldn't be more than 15 minutes, but just wanted to kind of review stage 3 components if you've started moving into that or not, or started to add components to that, but you're really describing what you've actually done. So you've all been working hard this fall to set up your redesign the materials, content, video, obtain technology assistance to do what you're providing. And it's all in how you're able to describe that. So the idea is that others taking a look at your e-portfolio will get an idea, snapshot, may want to follow up with you on your model, what you've done, how valuable, beneficial the technology used was it, were the vendors very helpful? Did they accommodate? Did they work with you? What different strategies did you use for working with the students to get them up to speed with it, using the technology? So all of that really is that stage 3. And then you can also, there's a couple additional prompts about like what additional activities have you participated in to prepare you for what you're doing, whether that's meeting with vendors or meeting with colleagues, meeting with instructional designers. And then the last thing that I have highlighted there, because it's one of the commonly missed components, is your, once you launch your courses next week or this week or shortly, you should have your syllabus already compiled. So this is a reminder that in stage 3, this is where you're actually going to upload that as a link and make that available to others to kind of preview that. Let me turn, my phone was turned off. Okay, so we're going to jump right in there. And if you can just communicate maybe via chat, we can just I can just kind of capture with text what type of aspects of your course you're redesigning. And a lot of you have been putting that into your e-portfolio, whether that is, let's see if I can access the chat. Let's see where the chat. And you have too many windows open, you can't see. So if you can participate via chat, what are the key or main aspects of what you're redesigning? So with lab manual, so if you can kind of just give me some ideas there via chat, we can kind of get the discussion going, or you could pick up the mic and just talk as well. Does everyone see the chat here? It looks like we've got the majority of the class in here. I can start at the top with Abraham. You can give me one component of what you're redesigning?
Yeah, they're starting to come into the chat now.
Yeah, I do see them actually. Lab activities, lab manual, and that can be a lot of work. So in stage 3, you could provide a sample or a link to one of the activities or a screenshot. I've seen that. but you'll definitely want to provide a sample or model. Don't just say lab activities redesigned. So you want to provide a sample or two of that. I wouldn't suggest, certainly don't load up your whole manual. That would be, I think just loading one sample would be a good model. In addition to the lab assignments, anything else?
Well, I would add just specifically that the main goal that I have in physical chemistry is the addition of custom software in Unity for an immersive experience for my students. Historically, what I've been doing is stealing or borrowing VR experiences from online and then merging assessments from those free software experiences. And so the grand idea is to generate the custom software. I have a fairly good starting point. The idea is that was done originally for HTC Vive, and that needs to be shifted or moved over into a general use software environment so that people on their Apple products and their HTC products, whatever type of phone they have, may be able to use it.
Okay, so are you, just to clarify, are you launching this spring or are you delayed because you're still working on the developing?
Well, I mean, I've been doing it for the past 2 semesters, but not with the proper software. So, I mean, it's kind of in the works, but I would say from what I really want to do, it's still delayed.
Got it.
It's not what I want.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so in addition, let's see, Dennis has, so you're developing a simulation, so a software simulations, is that what you're doing, Dennis?
Yes, that's correct.
Using what tool?
Well, a couple of different tools. I'm trying to get I'm working on trying to get a 3D image of the circuit so they can so the students can actually then build up and as an example. But I'm not quite there yet. The other piece that I'm working on is then in the simulator in National Instruments Multisim, having a simulation of the particular circuit. There's also a 3D modeling capability within Multisim, so I'm kind of show them the board within there too. This is a like a first year, second year type of course, so they need a lot of help.
Mm-hmm. So are you also launching yours in spring, or are you delayed?
Well, I'm trying to. Yeah, I got delayed on the funding part, so I'm not as far along as I'd hoped to be. But my original target was the summer anyway. But I am teaching the course this next semester, so I am implementing portions of it this coming semester.
Well, so likely you'll want to also, as you think about your pre and post, you want to, break that down and include the previous. So you almost kind of have 3, kind of a pre, mid components, where it's partially redesigned and then a full.
Yeah, where I'm trying some of it out a little bit. Yeah, and I can show the examples of what the lab assignment looked like before, what it is now, and hope to get some feedback from the students that way too.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Anything additional that you're working on? So I'm just trying to generate a little bit of discussion or ideas. So, certainly some of these, with these redesigns, it sounds like there's still, you're certainly going to launch possibly in the spring, but it might not be with the full aspects or benefit of your proposal, right? Where you might have parts of it.
Yeah, I was trying to, have a little bit more of a VR kind of experience for them. So I was trying to look at maybe like the GoPro Fusion or something like that that would help, where I got some of the ideas from some of the previous presentations I've had.
Mhm.
And the idea being, I'll show you a working piece on the camera, I guess, a little bit. But I have sort of a board showing sort of the stages as they're going to go through. And what I wanted to do is be able to, so they could sort of rotate this and in a visual piece. The problem I was having with the still pictures, because I do have pictures right now, the problem is sort of the parallax. Basically, as you take as the camera angle shines down, yeah, I could show you another time. But anyway, it'll look as, because they have to plug them into different slots. It'll look like in one case, the problem we've been having is with the switches. Is it looks like on they're in the wrong. I mean, it appears visually as they're in one place where they really should be in a previous place. And if they actually wire it that way, they blow the power supply. So the power supply, and so that's somewhat of a problem. So that's why I was trying to add that, you know, the ability to sort of look at it so they could sort of rotate it around and see how it's actually supposed to be done. So anyway, it's probably premature for that piece, because I've been scouring through the university looking to see if there were any of the particular tools that were available, and also the continuing education arm of the university and stuff too. And so they have a VR lab, they have some other pieces. Some of it was modeled after San Diego and Sonoma. And so, but they don't have quite that particular interface just yet. So anyway, that's where I was headed. That's what I was looking to do.
Okay. So even though you're still launching in, parts of it in the spring, and then the fall and the summer or fall, you'll still be responsible for completing stage 3 and 4 and having some results. So, so all of you you certainly could identify what you've actually done, and then you could also break it down and be like, and, you know, I'm continuing to expand or produce or want to, you know, in the spring, I'll continue with this. So maybe describe what you're continuing to do, what hasn't been done, right?
Right. I appreciate the clarification there too, because yeah, I wasn't trying to like say, oh, well, I have to delay this, and so therefore, you know, I could have a easy out of that. No, I really was looking from the standpoint of, yeah, I am cognizant of the fact that we do need to show some results, and so I'm trying to see what I can do and move in that direction.
Yeah, and I know JP isn't here, but he's still, you know, so those results are just important as well for kind of re-secure funding for next year for LIT and get others excited. So he's still working on, I can't confirm that he's got that approval, but it looks good, but it's still, you know, not 100% approved. So I know that, you know, certainly all of these updates and meetings, he's able to kind of pull together, like, you know, this is a rich community, right? That we have a lot of sharing and learning from each other. So, so within I just wanted to show you a couple examples. And so previously, you guys, we had a great speaker in December with Juan, I'm going to butcher his name, Kam, Beth, help me. Young Khan, anyway, with the kinesiology. So definitely, you know, if you have any videos that you're developing, you'll want to include a sample of that as well in there. The easiest things to do within the portfolio are to create links to images or upload, you know, add images or links to, you know, documents or URLs. So that's certainly the easiest way. So this is just a screenshot where, you know, if you have your lab activity, you could just link to that. But, you know, at a minimum, it's real easy where you could succinctly bullet, you know, the breakdown of these are things that I've redone, right? So at a minimum, you'll want to have some description or narrative of that and provide a sample of something so people can get an idea. So maybe it's even a sample of, you know, the different the technology as well. So it, you know, sounds like some of you kind of live and breathe that, but someone coming in from the outside, if they're not unfamiliar, might not even have any aspect of what you're talking about. So embedding the videos, I can tell you there's FAQs within the Lit ePortfolio webpage. There is a slick way to embed the videos to where it looks like a video with a play button. Like this is actually a screenshot from that ePortfolio. You could certainly link the URL, but you can see that URLs tend to just get buried within text and they're less likely to pop out at people. So I've always strongly encouraged people to actually embed the videos that look like videos so that it's just a much richer ePortfolio or product. So I certainly can help you do that, walk you through that. I do have it also linked on our FAQs as well, step by step, but there is kind of a trick to that because you have to get that embed code. You have to put the video certainly somewhere, you know, on a public site or streaming from something and grab that embed code to do that. So anyway, that's just to get you thinking about that, what type of things you could capture. This one using an iPad Pro, so any type of, like, this is kind of like looking glass type thing, but any type of capture of that. Another example of screencasts or homework, if you're doing any type of screencast where you're doing the lab homework, that could be cool as well to include. And then just reiterating that redesigned syllabus. I don't know how creative your syllabuses are, if they're heavy in text, but we have seen some really good creative, you know, engaging syllabi. So if you're kind of thinking about that, so if you haven't taken a look, it definitely, as you go into stage 3 and 4, I would absolutely take a look at the showcased ePortfolios. They're very rich with ideas. On the far right-hand column, there's a date, and you can kind of sort it. So maybe look at the more current ePortfolios for some ideas. But that can kind of give you something to think about. Any questions on stage 3? Due date is February 15th. You'll get a smart sheet reminder to indicate if it's completed or not. And then once it's completed, I'll do I'll review them and I'll give you personal feedback. And maybe I'll nudge you to say, hey, you know, Sarah, let's make this video actually embedded, right, rather than as a link. So maybe can you elaborate on X? So I kind of do that initial, you know, review of that and try to give you some suggestions for improving that, so it's not all at the end of the year in May, June.
So there's a question by Tume in the chat.
Tume says, should we put any info on the VR lab development on campus that we contributed to in order to run our courses using the space in the future? I think it's a great idea, and I would even take a picture of that space, the classroom space as well. So, I mean, it sounds like that would be a major component, right? So I have seen people put the actual pictures of the spaces in there as well. Okay, just a housekeeping announcement. These last couple things, this is from JP. So this is a different than the regular monthly update. JP, and I think this is what really will help him garnish funding for the for next year's RFP as well. But really providing it's more detail in the mid-year progress report. Looking through it, it kind of looks like it's a compilation possibly of some of the information you put in your previous monthly updates. So maybe taking a look across those and pulling that together. I did see on the third question prompt where it says mid-year course redesign project, though. I'm going to get this in just so you can see a little bit. So this, it looks like describe your course redesign project in the form of an abstract you'd be submitting to a publication. Give attention to teaching learning problems being addressed. This sounds somewhat like your proposal. So maybe take a look at your original proposal. Maybe you've done some minor, possibly major changes to what you originally proposed as well. So I think this is really re-looking at your original proposal to see how it's evolved or changed there. So as you can see, student characteristics are in here. So this is, it's a little more comprehensive. It's due at the end of the month, and you'll get reminders from me if it's, you know, not submitted timely. But it's it'll be via Smartsheet. So Beth, can we make, I just want to, so you'll be getting a reminder in Smartsheet, but you won't have access to, you want to have an actual screenshot or capture these questions before you go into that, right? Because you copy and paste them and compile them outside of it. So maybe we can take a look at the main lit website, Beth, and kind of see if we can add those prompts in there. So I'll take a look. Another item for housekeeping, JP just wanted to gently remind you, and this is, we do this across all of our programs, so once your course actually launches, after census date, JP will send you an Excel template, and then what you'll do is compile your students' emails, the email addresses. So they use the email addresses to send them the survey, and this survey is sent out late April. And what it does is they're asking them question prompts about the technology. Did they like it? Was there value, benefit? So it's gathering that feedback. I can check with JP. So I know with our data, we actually provide the data after grades are submitted. We provide that raw data back to the individual instructors, so that they can use that, because it's good feedback from students that could inform your future teaching of that course, right, and using the technology. So I'll speak to him about that. That's something that he typically does, but I think it'd be real valuable to have that feedback after. So expect that email from JP once your term launches. And then lastly, in May, just a reminder that there are final presentations. And we don't have the breakdown of who's presenting on which day, but each of you will have a 30-minute presentation followed by Q&A. So with the group of 12, I suspect there'll be 6 of us, 6 or so each day, with, probably be like a 3-hour, long thing with back-to-back presentations, maybe with a schedule. Invitees will include your respective campus administrators, like your department chair, faculty development director, maybe the director of academic technology, any of your department faculty. So it's kind of a rich way to share some of your data and what's really happened. Similarly to what the previous presenters that Beth has had come in and share with us, they've been extremely valuable and insightful, and so you'll be doing something similarly as well in May. And then I'll pass it off, if you don't have any questions about those, to Jeremy Warner, it looks like, and Sara Kassis. I'm going to stop the share screen so that one of them can pick it up, correct? Okay.
Thank you. If there are any questions for Ashley, that if anyone wants to type them into the chat, we can compile them there. I'm going to push us on to Jeremy and Sara. I'm not sure if it will help Abraham, because the Unity, they have more Unity experience than I do, and maybe the rest of the community, if anyone else out there has some Unity experience, might be able to help with the development. But Yeah, it would be great to say hello to Jeremy and Sarah again. Jeremy, if you want to go first and share kind of what you've been working on, that would be great.
Sure. You can hear me, right? Okay, awesome. Let me share my slides. So, I'm going to talk about my EAT portfolio, which was gamification and along the concepts of gamification. So I had a couple different gamifying items that I put into the class. I'm a professor of digital media at Bakersfield. This was done when I was at Fullerton, so I had different access to different equipment. So there was a VR lab or VR space at Fullerton, which we don't have at Bakersfield. So right now I'm not working on the VR aspect until we have the equipment. We just don't have a space to set up equipment right now. So that's the issue that we're running into at Bakersfield. So I've moved on to something else. I'll go over that. So basically, my issues were I had a large lecture course. It's a really difficult subject matter. It's language of film. Most people come in, think it's just watching films for a couple hours and that's it. Oops, sorry. They think it's coming in and watching films for a few hours and that's it. And it's actually more of math, physics, lit, art, etc. The equipment that they need for the class is usually low-end DSLRs, which run minimum usually around $700 to $800. If they get a decent one that's a DSLR, and then they run up to $20,000, $30,000, which most students can't afford. The other issue is the students have a lot of scheduling issues, so they had to get friends to help to be in their slides, etc. So that was difficult. It's a tech-heavy course. It's a heavy workload. There's about 12,000 images or 1,200 images they need to take for the course. And then also the students overanalyze it. In 2015, the D to FW was 35%. So just to give you an idea of what I was challenged with. So I come back from history and research of immersive media, so that was my graduate work as well. So I was looking at VR, and there's a lot of research on interactivity, mimesis, and empathy coming from VR, and saying, hey, VR actually increases your learning skills. And I have some research stuff at the end of here if you guys want the slides. I also was looking at the research that's saying if you use storytelling to move forward your concept of teaching, it actually makes the students learn better. So they did this in biology classes and whatnot, and they found that if you actually tied it to a narrative instead of just giving them information, they learn better. And then also I was looking at research from gamification, which it provides various forms of stimulation. It's about the user experience, so it's focused around the student, not just focused around a class. It uses mimesis once again. The hooked model, which I'll go here into a second, and then also game points. So one of the things that they found in classes with gamification is that students, there's a helicopter overhead. So anyways, welcome West Hollywood. Anyways, they found that students with game points would interpret those different than class points, because I had the issue that every single point in class they would fight over, whereas if it was game points, they were just points that they were awarded with, so they didn't care. So it made it way easier also when I started doing some of the point issues. It became more of a competition and less of a grade grubbing issue. So near Eyal, he does something called the hooked model. He was a game designer for several years, and this is the way that I designed the course, is that there's a trigger. That trigger then goes into the action. That action has some kind of variable reward, and then they get some kind of dopamine response back, and it goes back into trigger. So it's exactly how you use Facebook. It's why you pick up your phone. It's everything else, and that's the way that I designed the course, was based upon this idea of hooking, award, coming back, hooking, award, coming back, and it actually worked quite well. So I did this in several aspects. One of them was like Kahoot I used in class when we reviewed lectures. I used a flipped classroom. Some of the other things I did was there were points and games that they played. I had badges. So down here at the bottom of the screen, you can see my garbage pail producers, and those were badges they would be given in Moodle. So there's Tim Burpin and Ridley Snott and Michael, I forget what he is. Anyway, so they were all these like based on the Garbage Pail Kids from the 1980s. The students absolutely loved it. In fact, I had much higher, this was in a different class, but I had a much higher participation rate in completing assignments just for the badges. And they said they did it just for the badges. So I also gave prizes out in class. So I gave things like free game keys. So I get a lot of free video games, and I give them game keys from Kahoots, winning things. So it was always a competition in class. And it actually, several students told me afterwards that it made them want to compete and be better than everybody else in the class. And then usually I would have very few that would, I usually had only one or two students that would win more than once or twice in the class ever at a Kahoot. So it was competitive. It wasn't the same student winning over and over and over in the class. So, so this is the idea of a pipe. Is that right? This is the idea of a pipeline and what I kind of went forward when I started my course redesign. So the normal video game pipeline concept, pre-production, production, maintenance, upgrade. And so what I did was I did the concept, and then I created the game design document, which I'll go here in a moment. And that's the stories, characters, locations, and quest. I gathered all my assets. I developed it in Unity. I tested it out. So that was the pipeline that I did. So I had two different things that I used in my class. I had a virtual reality experience, which was I contacted Lone & Wolf, and I'll show you a clip from it here in a moment, in London, and they said, yeah, you can use it, and they helped me. They built it up a little bit in terms of the game, and we used the Magic Hour thing for the virtual reality part. And then I also had a small prototype of a game, which is an RPG that the students would play, and they would be an intern going to Saddle Goose Studios to go work for Mr. Fowler. And so they were sent out then on location to go do like photo shoots and stuff. And we didn't get super far into the game, but as they would walk along, it was like Final Fantasy where battles would pop up, but instead of battles, it would be quiz questions, and they'd get quiz questions, and their points in the game were the amount of points they got in the class. So if they played it over and over again, they could keep playing, and they could keep getting more and more points. So it was then using that idea of points aren't set in the class. You could get literally infinite amount of points if you played the game nonstop, which I allowed them to play that game for, I think it was 2 weeks. So this was just to give you an idea of the game design document that I created. So you have the story up here, and the professor yells at him to wake up. He has his quest, which is going out and seeing Mr. Fowler about an internship. Wanders to the studios. Quest 2, find the workflow on each person. So they had to go find each person in this land and talk to them and answer questions about what they do in the film industry. So that was an idea of the quest. Later on, which I didn't get to fully developing and is in the future of developing, is they would go do things like take pictures at the beach, and they'd have to get long shots, medium shots, other kinds of different things. And the game actually is able to grade automatically and say, hey, if you have this amount of the person in the shot without this amount, you get this amount of points. And it would also go directly into the LMS, which I actually worked with somebody at in IT there to develop an API, experiential API to feed it into Moodle at the time, which was partially working. So if you want a concept of a game design template, GDD template, game design document template, there's one on here. So if you guys want the slides, I can give them to you and you can look it up. So this was also another thing in the GDD was my map. And so this was the map of everything. So I laid everything out in great detail before I ever began to develop it. If you don't, you're going to have a huge, huge issue. I'll post it here in a bit, because if I try to post it here right now, I got to figure out how this Zoom thing minimizes on the screen. It's really funky. So what happened after I used the virtual reality and the RPG in class is I went from the fall, which I had about 78% passing, to 82% passing, I think it was in the fall, or in the spring, and non-passing was much lower. There is an issue. I had a much smaller class in the spring than I did in the fall, because they realized they had to give me the class to teach the class for the grant. So they weren't going to have me teach the class at all, but they just threw me a bone. same thing though happened, and actually with the photo journals, even comparing it from before, the photo midterm and final exam went up slightly, which was normal for a small class, but the biggest issue was the photo journal, which normally they all sit around 75% in a normal class. This jumped to, in the first fall semester, I had 73%. In the spring semester, they jumped up to 85% using the virtual reality. So they jumped really high. The students absolutely loved it. There were a lot of issues, but the students absolutely loved it. So just to give you an idea of what I did with Lone and Wolf, here is the concept. There's no sound on this. I took it off so I could talk over it. But here's the concept. They can then adjust the camera and take pictures, and it would give them little tasks to do, quests inside of the actual game, which is the one thing I worked with Lone and Wolf about for Magic Hour. And they already had developed the Magic Hour where you could go take pictures. They just added in a couple things for me and then published it to Steam, and now it's on Steam if you want to look at it. So same thing here, you can set the camera and then it goes through and you can play then with aperture in this one, and it then adjusts the background. So that gives you an idea of that part. Here's,
Joe, can I ask a question? I'm curious if they're wearing the VR headset in lab when they're doing this?
Yeah, that one they were wearing the actual VR headset in lab. So this is inside the headset. Those are the controllers right there, and that's what controls then where they're at in the screen and then doing all of that. So yes, it was completely in VR, which is the goal to get this one. This one was done as just a game right now, and it's actually going to be put into VR. And this is, play. So this is Saddle Goose Studios. And this is the one that I developed for the prototype for things. So this gives you the idea. They walk through, they come up, they talk to Professor Warner. He basically tells them, hey, you fell asleep in my class, and it goes through. I also has an accessibility plugin added in, so if they needed to have it read to them, they could be read to, but I didn't use any kind of speaking. I also programmed in the different people in the office, so that was our administrative assistant in the office, so they could go see her. To give you an idea of kind of how the quiz works, you can then run out, and as they're running out of the school, which is California University, fake university from what was that show? Saved by the Bell. Then it pops up, and then they have quiz questions that they answer as they go through. So it's very similar to Final Fantasy if you've ever played something like Final Fantasy. So just to give you an idea, and then after that, as they continue on, it would tell them, hey, what light is this? They can make it go bigger. And the other thing is the clock also, they're working against a clock, which was helpful as well. And then just to give you an idea, then it would go on to the different part of the map real quick. Hey, you're leaving California University. Be careful, the world's scary. And then they go into like town and whatnot. So that gives you an idea of that. So there were several issues I had in designing these. Number one was optimization. So to give you some ideas on issues I had inside of Unity, you need to understand the difference between like CPU intensive versus GPU intensive stuff. So for instance, materials, you can't really have two more than per mesh, which was some of the issues I had in my game because the students had problems running it. So bones, for instance, you can only have 15 to 30 if they're running on mobile, desktop 15 to 60. And I actually try to keep everything closer to the mobile design later on, and that's actually why we're redesigning parts of it, is because most of the students' computers could barely run parts of the game if the optimization is not there. Separating schematics, then also doing GPU stuff, polygon counts. So Dennis, I know you were talking about your circuits and stuff. Watch the polygon counts on all of your stuff. Same thing for bones on GPU. And then single meshing on any characters if you use characters. Other issues we had was just making sure you bake as much as possible. So for instance, GI, navigation meshes, things along that lines if you're using Unity. The other thing we had is we updated Unity once, which broke the game. So never, ever, 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 once again, never, ever update Unity. Once you get it, you stay in that release for the rest of your life for that game, unless you want to break it or redesign it. I tell my students all the time, because I teach Unity in my classes now, and they update it, and I'm like, you got to start over, and they cry, and that's their fault. So it will break your project. I cannot express that enough. I've done it several times. to different things. Use source control. So that would be things like GitHub or the Unity Collaborate. And I highly suggest you update no matter what every 15 minutes, or you commit every 15 minutes, and make sure you're really specific in terms of your source control updates. So saying, hey, this is what I added. This is specifically what I added. Because when I was trying to make the video for the RPG thing last night, I was going through my old source controls because I didn't do the best at first in terms of writing down what I did. So GitHub is free for you guys, and you guys can get free private repositories, as many as you want now. Actually, it's for everybody now, but you can also get them for class, so I use them in class as well. Errors are going to appear out of nowhere no matter what, so you better get used to it. If you can't deal with an error, don't develop. It'll be in your console. If you can't find the answer, go to Discord, so Brackeys, Game Dev, Unity. So I use Discord in class too. They're required to go on Discord, which is a gaming chat thing. Twitch as well, they use that as well. Unity forums, Google, of course. And then also if there's errors with assets, I would just email or call up the developer and ask. So other tips, use the Unity services. It'll allow you to build in the cloud and take it away from your computer. They allow you to do the deep analytics. It's worth it to pay for the subscription. I think it's around $300 or $400 a year, but it's worth it. They give you a 20% discount on assets usually, and then also it's easier to collaborate through that if you have a small collaboration in GitHub. Update and maintain the project. So once you're finished, you have to constantly update and maintain it. Don't think it's going to keep working. A year from now, it won't. Trust me. The files that I had created for the RPG game before that they were using in class no longer work on my Mac. So the PC ones do, but the Mac ones don't. So there's that. Game music, I highly suggest that you really use game music. Game music's part of player involvement. In fact, I tell my students to study to game music because it's specifically psychologically designed so that you focus everything in on task. And that's why games are so addictive in some ways. And the game music should match the tone though. In terms of physics, even though Unity's a physics simulator, we idealize representations in that physical space. So you need to run like a cheetah, not run like a human. You need to jump like a kangaroo, not jump like a human. Idealized patterns are really important. So Sarah, I didn't think on the educational version though, it does use the pro services because I had issues with that this last semester when I was teaching it. So I don't know. That was one thing I need to check into. So right now what I've went into is I've started working in Amazon Alexa, which is a voice user interface, and they've just implemented then also a few with their show and other stuff, APL, which is presentation language, and that's the stuff that I started working into now. So right now I'm working on a database where they're able to ask, hey, Alexa, I don't want to do it because she'll go off, but tell me, what is a f-stop, and then she'll go, f-stop is this, and that, and then it also shows a picture of the aperture, and they can play with the aperture inside of the APL language. So Amazon reached out to us for educational development in that, and that's what we've been working on. My e-portfolio is there if you want to check it out once I post the slides, and then I have some references if you want some references to some of the research.
So is Jeff Bezos going to steal you?
No, probably not.
That's good for us. So thank you so much. This was
welcome.
really, really, really helpful. Sara, I hope that we have enough time.
I'm sorry.
No, it's just the nature of the beast. So we went a little bit longer with the stage 3, and always I'd rather have more than too little. And if I could convince Sara to come back, and both of you perhaps come back and continue the discussion, I sense that there is probably a lot of questions now.
All right. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, thanks for having me today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what my students have done over the summer using Unity to develop educational software. So much like most of you, we are, there's a lack of software that's really relevant to the fields that we're teaching in. And so I got a group of students together over the summer to actually develop in Unity. And so my background is in physics. I teach in the engineering department at Sonoma State. And So I am learning Unity. I have been learning Unity, and so I'm confident enough now to actually do more with it, and so forth. And so I taught a class last spring where students really who had zero experience with Unity, who possibly had maybe a intro to programming level of experience, did not know C#, and they were able to successfully build Unity apps for VR. And so it was great. It was a hands-on learning type of class. I'm also planning to teach something similar next semester, but I'm going to tell you a little bit, or next week, actually, starting next week, which is going to be a little bit different than the one I taught last year. But let me go ahead and get started. I have some slides to show you. And so let me share my screen. Okay. And so let's see, how is this? Here we go. Okay, and so what I am going to be talking about is the app that we had built over the summer. So here are my students who were on my team. Now, I wanted to stress how multidisciplinary the students were, their backgrounds. So I have 2 students who are computer science, so Dana and Blake. They worked on the 3D modeling and worked on the computer coding. The app that they were building was for electrical engineering. This is basic circuits. So Dennis, I think you'll be interested in this. And the whole nature of it is to maybe try to get students to utilize, to learn about engineering in VR rather than having to access expensive equipment and so forth. Maybe this could be used for K through 12 education where resources aren't as available. But studies actually show that, first of all, utilizing VR or augmented reality is a very successful model to increase learning. So I think we're all in agreement on that. And second, studies also show that the first years in engineering are very, very critical, and as such, impacts a students when they graduate, whether it's 4 years, 5 years, and so forth. So if we could try to enhance their learning at the basic level in their early years, it might prove very successful later on. So that was the nature of doing this in the first place. So let me go back to my screen here. Corbin is our electrical engineering student, and he provided the subject matter expertise towards this project. And finally, Hannah is an anthropology student with a focus on accessibility. She actually was the user interface expert here. And so just real quickly, creating software with Unity, there's free accounts that are personal if you just want to get started and learn all of the introductory stuff. There's our beginning tutorials that Unity offers, which are very easy to kind of access and to follow through. There are computer requirements, of course, depending on the version of Unity that you definitely want to check on your computer. Version 2.18.3.2 is the latest one, but it's not always the best to use the latest because there's not, there can be bugs and things like that. And so again, I definitely reiterate what Jeremy was saying about don't change your version of Unity when you build, because I came across that in trying to upload some software. I was uploading software that was, I came across it and it was just a really big problem. And so anyways, there is a universal version of Unity, and that's 2.17.4, which actually, like when you're using Microsoft Word and you change versions, or somebody send you a version from a previous Word document, you're still able to open it and so forth. So that is the same case with this version of Unity. So it is like a universal version. So we did build for the Microsoft HoloLens, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So can you all see me with my HoloLens on? Okay, great. So with the HoloLens, the whole point of it is that students are able to virtually see the software that they're using, and in addition, they can still use their breadboards and all their equipment and sort of make those correlations. So the students did use Blender for creating the 3D assets, and so here are some images of what they use. This is a preliminary image of what they were going to use. Here are my resistors. you probably won't be able to see my resistor here, but here's a real life resistor. It's really tiny, but it definitely, so here it is in 3D. Here are some more images. So again, the LED, so here's my LED right here, which looks pretty close to it. And again, you saw my breadboard, which again resembles this very nicely. They did a wonderful job working on the 3D models. Just to give you an idea, the summer project was about 6 weeks long. And the students spent about 2 weeks doing the modeling. They did spend 1 week learning the physics, learning what they were doing because they didn't necessarily have an engineering background. But then they spent about 3 weeks putting it all together. And again, the 2 students that were putting it all together were computer science students. They did not necessarily have Unity experience, or they might have had a little bit of Unity experience, but they picked it up rather quickly. And then it was compiled in Unity. And of course, we have to use Visual Studio in order to deploy it to whatever platform you're using. But here is what the image looks like in Unity before it was deployed. And I will show you a video in just a second. So it does have to be deployed using the Universal Windows platform for the HoloLens. For the question, I know somebody was asking about or had talked about deploying to other either mobile or other modules. You can do that through Unity. So you would just have to change your what kind of platform you're doing, and then you might have to change a few things, but otherwise you would change, create the software for a different platform through Unity. So here is a real-time picture using the HoloLens. So again, the screen itself, the images are up close to resemble what somebody would be working on. Our user interface expert did a really fine job of figuring out where placement should be, what colors we should use to consider people, students who are colorblind. She also did the voiceover as well as anything that's written to really try to get a really broad spectrum of students and really take into consider accessibility, because really a lot of the games out there do not consider take into account accessibility, and it's a big problem, and it's only something that companies are just starting to address, and they're not even taking it seriously. So that's something to consider as well. And so finally, I think I'm going to show you my video here. So I did take a quick video of the Circuits app demo. And so, are you able to see it? No, okay. I think I'm going to, so just a second here. I think I know what I did. So let me just stop sharing real quick. And then I'm gonna share, oh, here we go, that's why. Okay, so now you should be able to see the video. Awesome. And here is just the intro portion for the app. Okay. And so here you can see the utilizing the actual components here. So here, for example, we're just, someone who has never maybe seen an LED or a resistor or even a breadboard might get a little bit of a tutorial on the first part of this. So the second component of the tutorial also includes, let's see, I'm going to go to here. Let me stop sharing so I can share this next one with you. Okay, so the volume on this is not as good as the first one, so I'll have to reshoot that. But again, here's the introduction page, and if you click on the tutorial and not the introduction, you are given a very similar kind of a page. And so a student actually has to build the components on the breadboard. So they're actually building it. It looks very realistic. again, some of the things are a little bit harder to access, and the students have been working with that in order to make it so it's not as hard to utilize. So let me just go a little bit forward here. Here's the battery. I'm trying to connect the battery. And now after it's been connected, the whole point is to visualize the electrons, what they are doing. So here students can visualize the electron flow and how the circuit might be complete once you put all the components together. And so let me just stop this here. And let me, I don't know if you can see, let's see if I was going to try to attempt. Do we have a minute? I was trying to show you this in real time. And so I could, okay, so now live preview. I was actually going to show you, oh, okay, now it's, sorry. Preview. Where are you? Okay, so share. All right, so I'm going to share my Windows device portal. Oh, sorry, just a second. Sorry. Oh no. Okay, stop. Okay, there we go. Sorry, that was terrible. Okay, I was trying to show you the live preview. And I turned off the mic, so let's see if it'll do that without. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, good. So I'm actually wearing the HoloLens right now, and I'm wondering if the bandwidth is, I'm able to show this to you. So let's see. Okay, so it is, it's gonna be a little bit delayed. The latency is a little bit, okay. So this is actually what I'm seeing. And so I'm going to take you to my main screen. So a student would normally wear a HoloLens. Obviously, they're not as easy to access. They're really expensive. And so one of our projects that we were supposed to have continued, but I didn't get funding for it, so we kind of put it on pause, was to actually migrate this app into a VR headset or something that's maybe more accessible for students to have throughout campuses. But regardless, you can see here that this is the interface for the Microsoft HoloLens. There's a variety of different apps that are on here. This one in particular, you can see the Unity app. This is the actual app that my students created. So there will be a lag in the image. There's a latency from capturing to actually showing it on the screen. But let's see. It's doing something weird here. Now, the HoloLens is also currently still in development. Obviously, it's not available for the mass public. There are still bugs. I've dealt with things. There's so many issues that I've come across with it. So again, it is something you could use. It's great, but otherwise, you know, again, if you're trying to develop, whatever platforms you have, it will still work just as fine. Again, I was trying to get this the VR app, the augmented reality apps, excuse me, mixed reality, so that I could take a look. Students can actually build on a breadboard, which is on what I'm doing here, and they can actually have the app playing at the same time and maybe make that comparison so that it clicks in a little bit better. So in a nutshell, that's what I was trying to do. I'm trying to, so I'm just going really, really quickly. So on my head, this is the HoloLens, Microsoft HoloLens. So this is in development mode. You could access one, you can buy it if they run anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000. They're really pricey. We were very, very fortunate to have gotten a grant to purchase 2 of them here on campus. And it really provides a nice means for students to actually see what's around you, and at the same time, see a computer-generated image through what's called mixed reality. So it's a combination of augmented reality, but you're still seeing the actual world around you. Some people say that it's better, so for those who are prone to like sickness or dizziness, because that does come up a lot. So that's one thing to consider when you are when you have students in your classes that might be prone to that. It's not very equitable to have everybody use VR. If someone is going to be sick after using it, you need to definitely consider that. So having mixed reality might help alleviate with these kinds of issues. And so I think we are up on time. I don't know if you have any questions or any comments or.
Yeah, I think we have a couple minutes. I have a couple minutes to hang out for some questions, and anybody else who can stay, that would be great. Otherwise, we'll just have to invite you guys back again. Yeah, I'm wondering, Jeremy, if you had any students who encountered that sickness phenomenon.
I had none of them tell me they did, at least at Fullerton. Now, when we've done stuff at Bakersfield, I've had a few students who've had sickness since being there. So, but not at Fullerton, I don't know. Nobody told me.
So it seemed like Abraham was having trouble with the development phase. I didn't know if there was some conversation that we could have that might help out with that.
Well, I was going to say, have you looked at the scripting assets? So there are scripting assets that do a lot of it for you, such as Playmaker. And if you learn how to use it, it'll allow you to actually do all the C# scripting without actually scripting. I think it's like $100. It's on the asset store, but there are things that will write the code for you. You just tell it how to go through, and it's basically just a state machine. So you set the state, what state it'll go to, and it'll script it.
I saw Jeremy's comment about running it live while on Zoom. I thought that was funny, but actually I was planning to use that to actually project in the classroom, because if this is just one way to show off what we're doing in the HoloLens. And obviously if you have a big classroom, you only have one HoloLens. My plan was to actually go via Zoom, or if the computer doesn't have capability to access or so forth. But that's one way to actually show everyone in the classroom. So yeah, or in an online class. Yeah, as Dennis mentioned.
I want a CSU library of all the stuff that you're developing.
It's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, when you guys create content like that, do you envision that it could be used by other people, or is that something that you just use?
Yeah, so the whole point of what I would like to do with this, hopefully to get it up and running where it's not embarrassing, right? So it's good. But I would love for it to be something that's freely used by others, and to have a Creative Commons so that others can make modifications and utilize it as necessary. So, but again, it's not in that stage yet. So.
Oh no, it's pretty good. Everything I saw, I'm impressed.
Yeah, for the Saddle Goose Studios, I was planning to eventually release it to Cal State University for free, and then it would be available to other schools for like a $5 or whatever per student.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, and then release a game version of it on Steam, so it would not have the quiz questions per se, but it would have then the game portion, so that people could still even practice, and then that way we'd be able to have some revenue coming back in to keep it maintained. Because I have to admit, like, I have 2 employees that also help me develop. It's not just me. I run it. I do everything through my company, Hamboning Media. So.
And then I was wondering, one of the things. So I've been going to places like Dave & Buster's, and they have these experiences where you can experience with other people. And so they had like a Jurassic Park ride with 3 people who could go into the space at the same time, and you could see the controllers of the other people.
Yeah, and that's actually really easy to do.
Okay.
You just need it set up. Our company's been trying to develop licensed entertainment for Dave & Buster's and things like that.
Okay.
It's one of the things, though, like I would say, hey, you need to be careful with right now, though, and using stuff off of Steam or other VR stuff, is because those are actually licensed experiences now, and you actually need to pay the educational license as an institution, and it does not fall under fair use according to the terms of service. So I would be very careful about pulling stuff off of Steam just to show it.
Okay. Thank you.
And I know of 2 people who've gone out and sued 2 different schools over it.
You know, that you bring up a good point, Jeremy, because we are still in such the early stages of using software for education that all of those criteria is not really outlined very well, or at least people are not aware of it very to that point. So we looked into getting like educational licenses here on campus. It's not very easy to do in terms of logistics. It's super difficult. So for us, our model was to set up the Vital. So we do have a Vital lab here on campus with 6 stations, and we had to create separate accounts for each of those stations. However, we definitely have to look into. We definitely have to look into the educational licensing for. Again, we don't want to come across any problems.
Yeah, I mean, I teach gaming, so I have the same issue all the time with it. So, yeah, that's a huge issue. There was something, I don't remember. But yeah, you're right. The licensing is really important. And also, since we're in that beginning, the other issue that I notice is that the people that are trying to develop for VR don't have the access to actually align it with, they don't understand the bureaucracy behind the schools. Usually they're not from a school system. And so one of the issues, one of the reasons why we got actually started making a lot of money consulting is that we actually understood FERPA and we understood all of the different aspects to kind of align it with LMSs. So that's why we started developing the APIX for the LMS so that you could actually feed the grade directly into it. But there's very, very few places that have actually a working alignment with the LMS. My ultimate goal is for it to also use AI inside of Saddle Goose Studio, so that you take a picture and it says, hey, this is like 80% like Hitchcock or 60% like Tim Burton, and then it gives you a complete critique on what you're doing based upon machine learning. And
yeah, that's really
so
cool.
we actually have a long-term goal of what we're trying to do with it. But it honestly, I think I only know one other company that even has something developed where they can actually align it with an LMS that isn't like a major publishing corporation.
There actually are companies that are popping out. I mean, I've been to a lot of events here in the Bay Area associated with that. In fact, we have an XR meetup this upcoming Tuesday, where we have a few speakers coming, some of them from industry, some from academia. JP will be here, so he's going to be talking a little bit about lit and about what we're doing at Sonoma, the CSU. And the companies that are actually coming are focusing on the pedagogy, and they will be focusing on the LMS distribution. But like you said, there's not very many who are actually doing that. So again, also accessibility is another issue. So not all companies are focusing on that either.
And I'd be there, except I teach my first class like 2 hours right before.
Oh no. I know, we would love to have everybody there. We had to try to align it with like so many different things, like the logistics was pretty crazy. But yeah, we would love to have you there. Anybody who everyone from the CSU is welcome to attend. So
actually,
could you send us information on that?
I will. Yeah. Let's see. Can I send it to you?
Yeah, I can share it.
Actually, I could share. I can just respond all on the email. So yeah. Yep, I'll do that. Yep.
So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so excited about what you guys are doing. I want to play with all of the stuff you're developing. I wish, I know this time we have a virtual convening at the end, so those May 21st, 22nd dates that Ashley was talking about. But I'm going to see if I can push JP to do something where we can all get together maybe and play a little bit more with the immersive stuff. I think that that's something that is really important that you guys are touching on. I've been reviewing some papers and proposals, and more people, more and more, just like you guys are saying, more and more evidence shows that experiential learning is really, really key. So thank you guys for today. If the general community has any additional questions, Jeremy and Sara are amazing resources. I'm pretty sure that you can email me, but if you guys are okay with it, you can probably email them directly, and they are very helpful. Next time we have Kassis talking. He's going to share with us some of the work he's been doing. Again, thank you guys for all of the work you've done and being willing to share with us, even though you're saying like, oh, it's early stages. It looks so awesome. Thank you guys for doing what you do. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
So awesome. It's so awesome.
I'll get it ready. Right now, the prototype's not working the best for Saddle Goose. I'll get it ready for you soon.
I'm coming over and we're playing, okay?
We're gonna play.
We're playing.
The other goal is to get it to be social, so you actually go out and you see your other students inside that
The
field.
gamification is huge. No, keep doing what you're doing, and please keep. I don't know. They should give you any time you need. Those 3 preps, whatever. Get the time you need to keep working and doing this. Okay.
Write me a letter. Write me a letter.
Yes, I will do that.
I'll see you later. Bye, Beth.
Bye. So good. It was